We continue with our senior journalists and editors just opening up their diaries for you to give you a sense of the next few days, how those days will unfold in their areas of specialization. SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena joins me now to take us through the diary. Sophie, before we get to talking about what you're looking at in terms of the international diary, exciting developments as far as SABC News is concerned. Tell me about this new show that we are launching, Unwrap Africa.
Yes, it is a show that is aimed at showcasing the African continent, different sectors, culture, music, sports, and of course, we will also have hard news. But what we want to achieve with this show is to showcase our continent and allow Africans on the continent and in the diaspora to tell their stories, but also to tell us in terms of what they are doing, particularly the young people. As you know that our continent, in terms of the population, it has got a youngest population. And therefore, they are very brilliant, they are creative, and innovation, it's what you find on the continent. And we don't often tell our story. We allow other international broadcasters to tell our story. We don't tell our own stories. As an African broadcaster, this is the time to allow Africans on the continent and in the diaspora to tell us.
Oh, I absolutely look forward to seeing it, Sophie. And as you say, I mean, also launched appropriately within Africa Month. So quite significant and poignant, really, the launch time for this new show. And then from the exciting to the somewhat puzzling developments about I didn't know that we were producing refugees as a country in terms of our own stability and the likes. Tell me about these so-called Afrikaner refugees that are going to the United States.
That is why it is important for Africans to tell their own story. The issue of refugees from South Africa is quite a thorny one. When you talk about refugees, who are you talking about? It's people who are fleeing conflict, violence, or being persecuted, being targeted. None of those descriptions fit the kind of life all people who are in South Africa are experiencing. There is no targeting of a particular group in South Africa for persecution. There is no war in South Africa. There are no violence. Yes, we have crime, and all South Africans are sometimes victims of crime, irrespective of their color, creed, religious, or political persuasion. And therefore, this is very questionable in terms of how the United States of America is going about this. And that is why many white Afrikaners, I come from the Free State, I interact with many Afrikaners, some of my neighbors, they don't agree with this characterization of what's happening in the country. Yes, there are issues, and these issues, you can see now our courts are dealing with those who are aggrieved. When you look at the current court case from the Democratic Alliance in terms of equity, and we've seen the justice system and particularly the judiciary in South Africa being very independent, taking rulings or making rulings based on facts. And I think there are avenues when people are aggrieved in the country where these issues can be resolved. And therefore, let's wait and see. And also South Africa is saying they will have to check these people who are going to the U.S., white Afrikaner, small group, whether there are no outstanding issues in the country. And remember, when you become a refugee, it means you are not going to return back to your country, or you are not willing to come back to your country. And therefore, this is something many people are shocked to hear, particularly South Africans. That's why South Africa Africa must tell its own story.
Yeah. Sophie, let's talk about the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So it sounds, from the sound of it, it sounds as if we are on the verge of a possible breakthrough. And these days it's quite hard to tell whether indeed this time around it will be possible to get it over the line, because it feels like we've had these talks about a possible breakthrough as far as a ceasefire goes. But how close are we this time around?
You know, as the African continent, South Africa, we don't get credit for what sometimes the country is doing. You'd recall that when the president of Ukraine was in the country, Zelensky, he announced publicly that he will agree to unconditional ceasefire. At that time, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, was also engaging his Russian counterpart, President Vladimir Putin. And we know he has mentioned on many occasions that he wants peace, but there are issues to resolve. And South Africa, behind the scenes, has been trying to speak to both sides to try and find an amicable solution. Now, America is also pushing 30 days ceasefire. We had a few minutes ago the new poll also calling for peace in Ukraine. And therefore, you can see that there's some movement. Last night, early hours of this morning in Russia, it was late midnight in South Africa, President Putin had a press conference indicating willingness to cease fire, but pointing out to some of the issues that must be discussed. On the other hand, we saw the leaders of countries such as United Kingdom, Germany, and France and the others, the alliance, going to Kyiv yesterday, meeting Zelensky, and Zelensky again making a commitment to subscribe or to agree to a ceasefire. So we are now waiting in this 24 hours. We are waiting to see whether this will be a reality, particularly ahead of President Trump's visit to the Middle East.
Speaking of ceasefires then, Sophie, tell me about the developments as far as India and Pakistan go. I believe there's talk of a ceasefire there as well.
There's talk of ceasefire. We saw the announcement yesterday, both sides claiming a narrative, Pakistan saying it was a victory, India saying it's a victory. On the other hand, President Trump saying it's because of the United States of America, particularly Vice President Vance and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. So that is happening, but China saying you need a permanent solution to this standoff, and therefore the two nuclear powerhouse, having that terrible tension, and everybody was scared that this might lead to a full-scale war, but that has been averted. But we don't know going forward to contrast with these countries.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Minister Ronald Lamola and the work that continues around the G20. What can we expect in the coming week?
The Minister will have a briefing where he's going to give us information in terms of state of readiness. And we know that this is the first time the African continent is going to host the G20 leaders in December. And during this Africa month, I think he wants to share with Africans what will be happening, but taking into consideration that the African Union is now part of the G20, just like the European Union. And I think he will also touch on the expectations from the continent. Of interest is who has been invited from the African continent. We know the formula of regional leaders, those who are leading different regions, but also who are the friends of South Africa who will be invited. The other only issue is President Vladimir Putin again, with the warrant of arrest still there. Will he come, or as South Africa is pushing for this ceasefire, the issue of warrant arrest will also come under discussion, perhaps to rescind or to hold back. And if that happens, I think he will be in the country in December. But we don't know. We're waiting.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that, Sophie. Interestingly, at least at this point, there's some line of communication between Pretoria and Washington, and I think that's an encouraging development. That's Sophie Mokoena there, SABC News International Editor.